beautiful day for another top 5 analysis looking at the biggest market cap cryptos that, of course, are very highly requested as well. And that is going to be SUI, Solana, XRP, Ethereum, and even Bitcoin as well. We'll start it off with SUI. Of course, I want to go from the top down here, going over the very, very long term. Back on over in January, we said, hey, SUI is putting in a major high, probably even a macro high. I still stand by that call, and it has come down since then about 70%. We identified from the first week of April that, hey, this thing is actually starting to finally show a fucking sign of reversal alongside most other things in this market as well for at least a short-term / medium-term upside move. And I couldn't have told you it's going to happen all in one fucking weekly dildo right there, but it has so far. So fair enough. Anyways, in this case, I do want to acknowledge that it is starting to head into some pretty significant regions. And if we are going to be looking for a short-term consolidation, this current area is a really fucking good area for that to be happening at. You can see that SUI has rallied all the way up to 355, which is the 50% level right here. And thus far on the weekly time frame has failed to close above it. In fact, has a daily closed above it? Maybe it has not. Yeah, it has not actually to this time as well. So I really like this area for at minimum a pullback. And if it is going to be one mega massive bull trap, then well, we'll talk about how that would look like a little bit later. But for right now, should be a pullback first, and well, should be looking for a higher low at the same time. So the question would be, where does a higher low come in around? Well, a higher low could very easily come in around the 382 level here. That's about 311, 310-ish region. Of course, if we were to draw just a Fibonacci retracement for the current move, then we would adjust that down a little bit, maybe $3 to 275. I would say, things could come all the way down to 277 and still be okay, it would still be a higher low. But the second that you start to close below 277, I would say, hey, that's confirmation of this thing being a mega massive bull trap. And of course, if you're even more aggressive than that, you just be waiting for it to close below $3 again. And at that point, yeah, you got your bull trap confirmed. That'd also be below, by the way, that white 200 simple on the daily, another just major area for kind of maintaining or destroying a bias here. So as far as the short-term pullback goes, there is several pieces of supporting evidence here that suggest that will happen. We do see that the daily time frame is, wait, hold on, I just completely lost my place on my notes. My bad. Yes, there we go. Daily time frame is seeing extremes on BBWP representing volatility. We haven't seen extremes on volatility since actually the November rally, which did eventually get more continuation, by the way, to the upside. But you can see that it did lead towards, the first decent correction here on this mega rally, taking a few weeks to kind of resolve itself and also playing down from $4 to $3. So what, a 25, losing about 25% right there. Anyways, I also do want to acknowledge that on the daily time frame, momentum is still to the upside. To be fair, it will remain to the upside as long as SUI is above 308. But you can imagine that with it in this critical zone right here, again, a level that has not been seen since November of the year 2024, it's going to be difficult to kind of keep it up here. So it's probably not going to happen today, probably not going to happen tomorrow, but early into next week, similar to what we've been saying for Bitcoin, that's probably a corrective time, first to second week of May. And you can imagine that this number will jump up, rapidly, especially like by Monday. So yes, I would again keep a keen eye on, let's just call it $3. If you do start to lose $3 to the downside and you're aggressive, I would say that's probably good enough to call this one a bull trap. If you want to go by the book, 277 is the area to be aware of, and you can kind of be, I guess, optimistic as long as it is above, or you can do what the fuck you want to do, but I can kind of be optimistic for it as long as it's above there. Not that I trade this thing at all. Anyways, going down to the low-term timeframes, I do want to acknowledge where the price action pivot is for the more lower-term timeframe traders here. I'm really starting to fall in love with this indicator, by the way. It just makes things so fucking simple and so fucking easy. It's this blue line, this blue dotted line that's telling you where the most recent 4-hour pivot is. So again, not relevant to the higher-term timeframes, only relevant to the lower-term timeframes. But if you do start to lose this pivot at 347, then on a closing basis, by the way, then you can expect the short-term correction to kind of get underway. Probably targets down to like 3.25, somewhere around there. But yeah, that would maintain the bias for now. As long as, of course, SUI is above this pivot, then theoretically you do have an opportunity for this trend to continue. But I've seen this thing being marched up this whole way through. At some point, it will break, and I do think that coming into early this next week, very likely we do see it actually break. All right, cool. Moving on over here into Solana. We have seen this one come all the way down to that white 200 simple on the weekly here. It's something that, very high period moving average. We don't see it happen too often, but it has happened here. And that was, of course, the impetus for us saying, hey, this thing is likely to at least bounce from this region. And, it can bounce up a lot. It just got beat the shit out of it from $300 all the way down sub 100, more than a 60% move. Hold on. Sorry, way more than a 60% move, 67, almost 68% move right there. So as far as Solana goes, I do want to acknowledge this one as well as Sui probably coming into some short-term highs here. This one's brushing up against that 377 exponential on the daily time frame, that blue moving average right here. And also it is hitting, hold on, let me go to my other Solana chart. Also, it is hitting one of our major fibs. It is hitting the 382 level. On this current move. So I do like this area for a bit of a consolidation sideways and down. I'm not calling this one all the way back down to the lows. But, as long as it's below essentially yesterday's high, Friday's high of 157, I would be treating this one as corrective in the short term. We also see the same thing here for daily stochastic momentum in the critical zone. This one's already turned down, by the way, as well, and will remain down as long as Solana's below 152.5. So I do think that you're in a corrective region right here. And again, that begs the question, how far can things come down and still be okay? Well, first area of interest is going to be about 134-ish, let's say. And then the 50% level is 126.5. Below 126.5, especially on a daily closing basis, that's where I'd say, hey, this thing is actually fucking wrecked. But until that happens, I'd be looking at any sort of pullback here, which can come decently, to the downside, as still a higher low and likely to try again to the upside. And again, we've been saying this for the past few weeks now on Solana. This thing can super easily bounce all the way up to, $180, maybe even $200. It doesn't really do anything for like the super long term, but it's pretty fucking big move, so maybe of interest. Anyways, yes, let's also go down to the lower term time frame pivot here on the 4-hour time frame. It is showing 145.5 as a Thursday low for the price action pivot. Again, only relevant to the lower term time frame traders out there. But if you do see Solana come back down below this region, especially close below there, I would start to be looking for those corrective targets to be hit. Again, it's not going to happen all in like one magical dildo. It's going to take some time. We're probably looking at like 7 to 10 days out from the start of Mondays would be my guess, which is straight up a guess, by the way. So, maybe it's a little bit sooner, maybe it's a little bit later. I don't fucking know. No one fucking knows. Anyways, moving on from there, let's get into XRP. XRP, a little bit more constructive here, in my opinion. I think that it is relatively strong in the sense that it did not have the same collapse that most things had, percentage-wise, from the highs in January to the lows in April. Most other things corrected a lot more. And as of right now, is reclaiming all major moving averages, which is, deserves some recognition. I mean, very few things have that on a weekly time frame, especially. Anyways, let's go through where did I? Oh, fuck. I completely derped it. Okay. Apparently I deleted my chart for whatever reason. Anyways, we'll go over here and we can acknowledge that XRP is brushing up against that 382 level at 228.5. That was essentially the high of this past Wednesday. So again, I like this area as a potential breakout area if XRP can reclaim it, or essentially just, reclaim the Wednesday high. But until then, I'd run with the assumption that this thing is playing out a bit of a sideways consolidation, maybe a little bit of downside in there as well. Let's go look at it from this perspective just really quickly, because for whatever reason, I did not have my XRP chart loaded up. We can see daily stochastic momentum is actually not in the critical zone like the other ones, but it will turn down below 122. XRP is less than a cent below that number right now. So, I don't know how relevant that's going to be for tonight, but if you do see things below 222, then I suppose, yeah, short term, can pull back. Where's your pullback target going to be? Price action pivot here showing an area of interest at around $2. That's basically where the 200 simple is on the daily as well. So I look at that as like a high quality area for at least a bounce and, hopefully a reversal if this thing does end up being bullish. That begs the question, if it does end up being bullish, where are the areas of interest to the upside? Well, upon continuation by reclaiming that Wednesday high, $2.50 and then 270 essentially are the two major areas of interest. Again, doesn't really get you to new all-time highs, but pretty nice move. Anyways, yes. Okay. So we got that and we got that. Elsa's yelling in the background. So who knows what the fuck's going on over there. But 4-hour time frame should acknowledge that the current price action pivot is 216.5. So, in the very short term, you can kind of run with the assumption, or you can do what the fuck you want to do, like I would say, but I can run with the assumption that, upside's technically more likely as long as you're above that. But again, all trends have an expiration date at some point. And if this one closed below 216.5, I would look at that as you're going to enter into that short-term corrective phase that we see the other ones, leading the way towards. And again, somewhere around $2, let's say. Hopefully it really doesn't go below $2 because that starts to look a little bit more ugly, I guess. But one thing before the next, of course. All right. Anyways, moving on to Ethereum, everyone's favorite. It's like, should we even take should we take Ethereum off of the big five? 4-hour time frame. Well, you can already see the price action pivot here, 17.25. This one actually looks pretty constructive, to be fair. But let's go over the higher term time frame look on this one. So Ethereum. Yes, Ethereum. Okay, just referencing my notes again here. Finally joining the fucking party, huh? Finally getting a little bit of a bid. Still much less than anything else that we've looked at today, but it is getting there. And of course, we were looking for a big bounce off of this one because it has hit the pity area of that blue moving average, which is a very, very high period moving average, the 377 exponential on a very high term time frame, the weekly time frame. So it's like you're almost always going to bounce around major regions like this. Again, doesn't happen all in one deal though. For the redacted YouTube commenters out there in the world, you can see this one's taken essentially a month since it first hit it, in late March. But it does happen over time. And you could effectively say that the 377 actually caught the low for 2022 as well. So, good historical relevance of this one, very likely to have a big bounce here. And it also is in the process of potentially reclaiming that red moving average, the 5 EMA, for the first time since basically the end of 2024 run. Yes, there was a bull trap right here where it reclaimed it for just a moment, but that's what bull traps do. They reclaim and then they unclaim very quickly. Anyways, before that, yeah, it was riding it over here, as it typically likes to do during its trending movements. But this is perhaps the start of a new short-term upside trend, at least for the weekly. Anyways, on top of that, I do want to acknowledge that is it right here? No, hold on. Yes, it's right here. I do want to acknowledge that weekly stochastic momentum is also going to cross the upside freshly for the first time in somewhat of a similar region to the beginning of the September 2024 rally. That will officially happen on Sunday if this thing closes above 1570. Right now looking pretty good for that. So if you see it close above 1570 and especially above that red moving average, I would really be looking for this one. And I just hope for Ethereum's sake as well, that it's going to bounce, a pretty decent amount to the upside. Personally, I think minimum, low 2000s. I shouldn't say a foregone conclusion, but I think very likely, very, very likely. And then on top of that, we can acknowledge that Ethereum for the crown oscillator, which again I haven't released or anything like this, but I don't know if I want to release it. But we are seeing dots. We're seeing the blue dots of destiny here, the blue dots of peace for the first time since, I guess this rally from October of last year. And actually the blue dots have been pretty consistent in getting around the lows before preceding major rallies. Most recently we saw it fire off right here, and that was preceding this rally from about 2,400 to the current highs of last year at 4,100. 70% rally. And of course, the time before that was right here. So I do think that this one can very easily travel up a decent amount more. We also, actually, no, I don't have a draw in here, but let's look at our Fibonacci retracements. 382 levels, 2,400. 50% levels, 2,750. I think it'll at least get to the 382 level. That's 2,430. That's also the weekly 200 simple here as well. I like these areas at least. If it's extremely fucking bearish, I guess it would get rejected there. It would seem even harsh for Ethereum at this point, but hey, I guess anything's possible with this highly esteemed piece of technology. But the 50% level is where I really, want to see it. And that's at 2,750. Anyways, going down to the lower term timeframes, I guess we already spoke about the price action pivot, so I will just let that one speak as it is. And I would run with the assumption that this thing does have upside as long as you're above that. That's 1724 in the more immediate term, by the way. All right, moving on from there, let's get into some Bitcoin action. The Bitcoins over here, giving it away right there, but let's go to the HPDR band. So I love using this chart, especially on higher term timeframes, and the 5-day timeframe did reclaim the median for the first time in many moons, many months, that is, basically since January. It had a small stint above there. And, before that, it was just really the last mega rally, which began in September of 2024. Anyways, I'm not saying that you're going to get a rally like that, but it is significant to reclaim such an important region. And that region now is coming in, if you recall from the past couple of days videos, the short-term downside target that we've been speaking about on this channel, which is 91,300. What am I trying to say? I do think that in this next 5-day period of price action, so between now and the end of this next week, Friday of this next week, I do expect a move somewhere down around the median to test it, but it should be a bounce on the first pass. Again, that's 91,300. If you start to see closures below the median, again, 91,300, especially on higher timeframes like 2-day, 3-day timeframe, and especially a 5-day, although I don't think you need to wait all the way for that one, that would be my indication that you are going to indeed get something to the effect of this, where, you get a rejection here and then you kind of just work your way down. I don't know if it comes all the way down to like 81,000 bucks, but somewhere in the mid to low 80s, something like this, wherever the bottom side of the 38.2 level will be. It, again, assuming it loses the median. As long as it is above the median, there is hopium that Bitcoin can essentially just continue to the upside from here. Next area of interest to the upside for the 30 at 2 level is going to be almost 103,000 US dollars, highly inflated US dollars, I should add. But yeah, would be all the way up there. So there is that. Anyways, you can try out this indicator and all of Caretaker's indicator with that same code, trial in all capitals. Also works, of course, with the quantum wave bands. This one actually bought during yesterday's live stream, I believe it was, at 93,000 bucks. It does not close this trade, by the way, despite trading nearly $3,000 away from the entry. Might be getting a little bit too greedy there, but maybe that's just me. If I was personally in this trade, I would certainly consider taking some profits here. But hey, that's just me. You can do whatever the fuck you want to do. But yeah, this one did catch a nice little move there after having a very small loss right here. So again, very, very short-term time frame scalping strategy. We are in the process of adding more longer-term trending strategies, which will be coming in early May. And also in early May 1st, we are going to raise the price from $70 to $90. But of course, you can try it out for free as well. That's why I love these free trials. Like, it's easy to shill things when you can just try it out for free. Like, figure out if it's relevant to you or not. You can make the decision. There's no drawback, basically, or at least not one that I can really think of. Anyways, yes, so that's there. We spoke about the HPDR. Should we go over price action pivot? Might as well. We're already here, right? Let's go over to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's price action pivot on the 4-hour time frame, again, only relevant to the low term, is actually Thursday's low at 91,650 or 91,600. That's pretty fucking close to that 91.3 median on the 5-day HPDR as well. So I would say, they're effectively one and the same, but I'd really be looking for a higher term time frame closure below there to confirm that, hey, we are going to see this extended accumulation phase between, the top side at 95 and the bottom side at, theoretically 75, although I don't think it gets all the way down around there. But yeah, that again would make me a bias towards the market cycle extending probably into the end of summer, somewhere around the end of Q3. So that'd be September-ish. But if Bitcoin just, green dildos its way to the upside from here, well, that makes me less inclined to say that this market cycle does continue that long. I think that kind of puts it on a little bit more of a time bomb. Anyways, there is one last thing for Bitcoin. Might as well mention it while we're here. For the TA nerds like myself who stay through the end of all videos, but the bi-monthly time frame, we've spoken about this a lot in the past. Of course, it's not like super relevant on a month-to-month basis. It only closes every 2 months, as the name implies. But the bi-monthly stochastic momentum oscillator is actually not going to cross down if Bitcoin finishes this month above 91,000 bucks. I would go as far to say that, hey, if you see Bitcoin below 91,000 bucks at the end of this month, I think, I think there might be another try to the upside, but it's not going to last too long, maybe another couple months at most. And then it's long-term corrective phase. But if Bitcoin remains above 91,000 bucks at the end of this month, then, that's where I'd also say, hey, this rally extending into perhaps the end of summer or somewhere deep into summer, deep inside summer, I think that'll become quite likely. But yeah, one thing before the next, and we really only have like a few days left to to wait and see, because the end of April is coming in actually at the midpoint of next week, Wednesday. So cool. All right. That's enough for today. Holy shit, this video way longer than what I thought it was going to be. My apologies for that. I see that we're also live here on Twitter as well. And so I'll stop this video and get onto Twitter for just a moment. All right. Anyways, it's a long way of saying, hey, thanks for tuning in. It's been a lovely day. As always, I'd like to wish you the best of best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully next time.